We're going live.
Got it.
Wow, you really have just airdropped us into this, Liz.
Let me remove my parachute.
Live. We're
Have
going
you already
live.
safely landed, Alex?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it would be a mistake to remove the parachute before that. I agree.
You did read the manual.
It
So if
wasn't
I'm looking
common sense
down,
at all. It's all
it's
manual.
only because you, Alex, are in the lower half of my screen, whereas Liz, you're up top.
Nice.
Yeah.
Where I belong. Hi, everybody. This is D3 TV Open Hours, and we are here today with Jonathan Blessing, CEO of DOOR3, Alex Asianov, founder and president of DOOR3, and I'm director of UX at DOOR3. And we're here to talk about focus. The title is The Future of Focus. Is this the first time that we have had a title in advance? I think maybe.
Is that true? Well, do you know where? Let me set this up. Why were we talking about this? Because I was having a call, as I frequently do, with our friend and colleague Wasim, who is probably maybe he's even watching this, and he said something that I thought was very smart and very apropos of the moment, which is the future is focus. And what he meant to say, I think what he meant, and actually we should have invited him here, if we had not just pulled this topic out of the air 15 minutes ago, we should have invited him. But really what he was observing is the increasing scarcity of focus, of the ability for someone to put their attention on one thing before it's diverted to another thing, specifically their phones, or most often their phones. And, and then I was thinking about, like, in the context of the work we do, not any of us here any longer, because I think, I'm not writing code anymore, and I know you're not, Alex. But when I think about what we need to accomplish on a day-to-day level, the increasing scarcity of focus is actually existential for us, because to write code and to write it well, it takes almost the mindset of a poet, where you're thinking so carefully about individual words, and punctuation, syntax, and simultaneously you're keeping in mind where this fits in the overall architecture of the thing you're building, right? And you can't do that while you're simultaneously texting with your spouse about, whether or not there's enough milk in the fridge. At least I can't. So anyways, Wasim made this comment, which is, he believes that in the future, productivity and success will really be owned by the increasingly few people who have the ability to put their focus on a thing and hold it there.
But what is it that, I think that we're really kind of holding one type of focus when we say focus, we're not referring to any kind of focus, because clearly people can focus on their phones. People can apparently look at their phones endlessly. But when we say focus in terms of something that is of value, we're talking about something else, like focus on
deliberate
problems.
Yeah, so Liz, I don't mean just, okay, so I think for a moment, just to kind of dig into this, I think what he was talking about, and I'm going to own it now. So what I'm talking about is the ability to kind of think deliberately. So when I'm staring at my small computer, also known as a phone, really what I'm doing is I'm almost taking like a bath in it, right? I'm not a deliberate agent. I'm just like, reading the headlines on the New York Times, the Washington Post, or Bloomberg or something. I'm not. It's almost like it's almost like sitting in the passenger seat of a moving car. But that is very much not me bringing my focus deliberately to something.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like sitting there and watching a fire.
Do you two watch movies?
Yes.
Like regularly, you start a movie and then watch it all the way through?
I do want to say, actually, now that you put it that way, that
you accidentally watch them?
It's become more and more infrequent. The more typical thing is to sit down and watch a half hour of a sitcom or an hour, like really a 45-minute like show, right? An hour. Both my wife and I sometimes look at each other and we're like, a 2-hour commitment, right? And I
Yeah.
was like, how do we
Yeah.
ever get married? But we can't commit 2 hours of focus to a film.
What about books? You two read books?
Yes. Yes. But those can be broken down into paragraphs of focus.
I read paragraphs. No, I have a good friend. Yeah, this is a bit of an aside, but I have a good friend who, he was once describing to me the way he approaches like his judgment on writer, and he's a writer, and he talks about great paragraph writers and great sentence writers, and I think increasingly, yeah, and great book writers, like people who are able to kind of create an architecture for a book, and I think we're all increasingly becoming sentence readers, headline readers.
Yeah, I got an email from a friend of mine that was preemptively just assuming that getting any real chunk of my time with focus would be impossible. He literally sent me an email the other day after not talking for a few months, saying, "Hey, so how about we get together and play Fortnite? It only takes about 10 minutes to get in and out, so like it's not going to require any kind of major commitment." And he didn't call me and say, "Hey, let's play games that take 3 hours, like let's play Dungeons and Dragons that takes weeks." He immediately assumed that there would be no time for focused interaction, right, of any lasting, span.
Yeah, and so I guess so in the context of we're here because we're colleagues, and so what does this mean for the work, right? What does it mean for the organization? And I'll tell, I guess I'll own up to this too, that I deliberately try to screen when I'm playing a part in hiring, I really do try to screen for people who clearly are bringing their attention, to the discussion and holding it there, and who show that type of discipline, the ability to concentrate, because it is a necessary ingredient to making big things happen.
Yes,
Okay.
but I think it is a necessary ingredient, but we can't live outside the influence of our times. So I think that like if I just reflect on how we interact on this here in this context,
Every time you drop an aphorism like that, it just begs for a challenge. But go on.
No, go. You can challenge me in a second, right? My point is that there is evidence points to the fact that we've already adapted to this, right? So when we speak, whether it be in this context or on one of our many phone calls, right, there is, I would venture to say, more humor interjected than there was 15 years ago when we first started working. We always joked around. Don't get me wrong. I mean, like, we are wild and crazy guys over here, right? But I would say that focus in smaller chunks can happen in one conversation as long as you're breaking it up a little bit. When I think about our clients who don't have the option to seek, for example, in an e-commerce experience, right? You don't have the option to only sell to people who have great focus, right? You're going to sell to people who show up on your website, and so you have to take into account the post MTV culture where attention is very finite. And what I've seen in our most successful early stage clients, right, is a, not to overuse the word, but the focus on creating focus. They're not creating sites for everybody who's interested in, let's say, jewelry. They're creating sites that are very micro focused on the particular, like it's silver earrings only that have a crescent shape, right? Like, I mean, it's hyper focused, because when someone gets there, they have a moment when they're like, this is what I'm looking for, and they're going to act
about
on it.
Specialization, Alex. You're talking about how the world is increasingly specialized and niche.
Partly to cater to a lower focus demo, right? That's part of the, there isn't like the sense that like someone's going to come to your website and just browse around for a little while, take in the poetry of your design, right, and build a relationship and think about like
I
how
agree.
they're going to come back and
People,
right.
consumers, users of software, especially web apps, they're so sensitive to resistance. If they do not find the thing, whatever that thing is, instantaneously they're gone. But and if anything, I guess that reduces the need to have focus. That reduces the impetus to learn. To learn the skill of focus.
Well,
Do you
right,
remember what it was like to try to buy a specific light bulb? If you had like a non-standard light bulb and you had to go to the hardware store and try to find it, or sort of like some kind of non-standard piece of hardware, and you're in like Home Depot and no one can help you, and you're sort of wandering around the aisles and trying to like read the signs, and it's very difficult, and you had to be kind of dogged and determined to find this thing.
Liz, I have a very concrete memory of being a young lad, and my father, we had, so Saturday morning we'd get in the car and we'd drive to the light bulb store. Right. They also sold lights and fans, but they specialized in light bulbs. And he would bring, the example of, he had the light bulb that he needed to replace, but there was only one store where he had any reasonable expectation of finding someone that might have it or be able to show him where to go. And of course, it would be a special order. And so, 2 months later, the light bulb would come in.
So I have a little bit of like a vintage lighting collection going on, a little bit of a problem with vintage lighting, which often requires non-standard light bulbs. And now you can go on Amazon and put in the serial number that is handily located on the fixture, and you find your thing immediately. There's no longer this requirement to like go on an epic quest. So that's a huge shift. And I don't know, like in terms of what consumers expect.
No, I think environmentally, there's significantly less background pressure on us as especially on us as consumers to bring much energy to our pursuits, because it is just so easy to find whatever the thing is that you want to find. Amazon.
Yeah.
And it's interesting though, but I think that does reflect back on all of us where, I think, focus will be the future.
How do you think that this relates to our business model in particular? Because I think about my friends that work in product development for product companies. And I try to think about how different their practice of UX must be when all they do is focus on some aspect of some individual product and go very deep into comprehending some particular aspect of a particular product offering for a specific company. They're just burrowing deeper and deeper into a very specific realm, whereas we need to understand deeply different clients. Often multiple times a day, you're shifting your perspective from e-commerce to reinsurance to cloud hosting, and that the requirement for focus is still there, but it has to be able to shift very quickly.
So I like to think of consulting as a haven for focused ADD people.
I mean, this is a place where the peripatetic will find companions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with that word.
Like walkabout, so it means to kind of move about.
Those of us who perambulate
but it especially shows up in the context of kind of intellectual inquiry. So I mean, it is I understand that this topic is a little narrow, right? What is our forecast on focus? But just thinking about it, I've got a couple young kids, and I think one of the decisions that my wife and I have made was to kind of, as much as is reasonably possible and humane, to kind of keep them away from screens. And I will say this about the both of them. They have incredible abilities to just stay on point indefinitely. They will read for many hours at night, one book. And it's,
So,
I think this will serve them very well later in life.
so if you can use your kids here, I'm gonna use my dogs
Okay.
to kind of consider the concept of focus among biological entities, right? So certain kinds of focus can be learned and unlearned, can become undisciplined and scattered, and therefore unfocused, right? And other kinds of focus are wired in very, very tightly, right? So my dogs are, all dogs have attention deficit disorder, but my dogs are completely incapable of comprehending anything when there's a bowl of food in front of them, like except that bowl of food. Like the focus is so absolute, you can never recognize that dog as like the absent-minded like squirrel kind of dog that you see the rest of the time. And so what that tells me is that when we think about and the human beings aren't dogs, but obviously, but we do have our drives, the things that we're instinctively wired to attend to. So when we think about driving focus, enhancing focus for the purpose of commercial interaction, or the kind of work that we do for our clients, whether it be building systems that people can focus on to do the work of the company day in and day out as a career, or customer engagement experiences where customers come on board the website for seconds to minutes, need to get something done and get out. The question is, how can we use innate drives, right, to enhance focus? It could be just connecting the dots when you think about social proof and so just social networking in general. Obviously that's tapped into something. People are able to it's a certain kind of ADD, but it is a focus ADD. People spend hours dealing with their social media.
That's Alex, right? I think that is a genuinely interesting way to look at it. And my response would be, I think this is one of the successes that sites like Facebook have had. They have really figured out how to play to our innate drives, including the drive for comfort, and that there is I have not used Facebook, so I can't really speak from direct experience, but I'm familiar with what it looks like. And what I can draw on is I really do find a type of comfort from being fed the headlines from the front page of the New York Times. Mm-hmm. It's almost comforting, even though the news is often not comforting, the news itself, but just to kind of be there as a passenger. And so I think where some of these sites and services are succeeding is that they've figured out that we don't want to be drivers. We want to be passengers. We don't want to be always producing. We want to be receiving. And I think that's where sites like Facebook or LinkedIn, which I have used. So LinkedIn which I have used. It is so well designed to kind of funnel content and experience and ideas at you without you doing much of anything. And there, I think it is tapping into a drive. The drive for comfort.
It's interesting
and consumption.
Because that's not my experience of LinkedIn at all. And I think it's because you have a much lower threshold than I do, because I use other social media. So for you, the LinkedIn experience is, pretty novel, and it is feeding you this new material. But my experience of it is very much.
Liz, I genuinely feel like when I log into it once a month, that there's this pressure that's released the moment I log into it, and so I try to shut it down and run away. But yeah, I feel like I think there's these sites they're very cleverly pressured. Like the user experience is very cleverly pressurized.
Yeah, it's like you're missing something all the time if you're not constantly logging in and reviewing what
It's
all
like
these
putting
things.
a bowl of food in front of one of Alex's dogs.
Exactly. And then maybe adding the food, you're adding like a new piece of kibble like every couple seconds,
Right. And so not only are you putting the food in front of the dogs, but you're pressure feeding them.
Yeah. I think so focus is an interesting thing. Like to a certain degree, there's an inevitability to the fact that focus is declining as technologies and experiences that enable reduced focus come into existence, right? And then those same experiences are that people spend blood, sweat, and tears developing are victimized by the further reduction, the cumulative reduction in focus, requiring further optimization of those experiences.
It's
So
an
there's a
arms
cyclic.
race.
It is an arms race, right? And there is, I do want to just say that there is a countercultural option, right? But it is a difficult, dangerous option, right? If someone wants to say, okay, we're not gonna humor this, we're gonna be different, right? You're going against an enormous amount of training that humans are experiencing in their day-to-day life everywhere else, right? But there are also other drives, and the drive for comfort, by the way, Jonathan, is in some ways related to the feeling of nostalgia, right? And there are other feelings like that create comfort not out of alignment with you today, but out of misalignment with you. If you're in a foxhole at war, right? Something that is not aligned with that experience is comforting. So I
At the same time, like, a warm, I mean, lasagna always tastes good, right? I mean,
but why, right? Some of it is that it tastes good, and some of it is it reminds you of like when you had it as a kid, right? And so an experience like a browsing experience that feels like I remember walking into a pharmacy a few years ago, and it didn't look like a pharmacy today, where it had it literally had wooden shelves and those old style like glass jars of God knows what, right? And it kind of smelled like my grandma's pharmacy in Ukraine, whatever, 45 years ago. And I was like, okay, I might not be able to find cotton balls in here, but I really like this place and I want to spend time here, and so there are ways to think about this that are not simply in alignment with the enablement of the trend, right? And that's, I think, realizing that opens up other strategic doorways when you're thinking about experience design.
Yeah, people aren't logical. I mean, we see that all the time when we do user testing. You expect people to do the straightforward, simple thing that you've prepared for them, and that to you seems like the logical path from the point A that you have identified to the point B that you want them to go to, and they do something completely off the wall. Mm-hmm. They don't see the giant button that says click here. They scroll right over the call to action. They, decide to use the browser back buttons instead of using your navigation. Like, people aren't totally creatures of logic. And I think that's like, it's a mistake that happens in certain fields, but I think that, and I think that we all have these assumptions, especially when we're professionals in a field, but it seems like economics is a field that is full of the assumption that people are logical actors, and maybe they're not. Maybe engineering is the same way.
Yes, I think that is being re-examined in the field too. Yeah, yeah, like a dog. Yes, like a dog with a bone, or one of your dogs feeding on its kibble, Alex. I just can't let go of the fact that I do feel that there is a general erosion in mine and in the people around me, their ability to kind of deliberately do a thing for a prolonged period. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we're calling focus. It's almost like I'll speak for myself. It's almost like like where when I was younger, I don't think I always was reaching for relief from the experience all the time. Whereas now at 45, conditioned with phones and internet, I feel like not that long a period passes before I feel something kind of well up within me to look for relief. And often that relief is just check the headlines in the New York Times or something, or check in with some friends on iMessage.
Mhm.
And I do think this is I think this does represent a significant change in the way in which we relate to ourselves and we accomplish things in the world.
Yeah, but there's also, and just going back to the countercultural argument, like there's also, for any given business, any given person, there's the kind of the sweep of history, the influences around us, and then there's what we want to be. You can walk down the street in New York City, right, overwhelmed with the
Well, today you need to take a boat.
Today you need to take a boat. Good point. So for those who are going to be watching this some other time in the future, this is a time when this is a day after Storm Ida came through New York, right? So today you need to take a boat. But generally speaking, you can walk down the street, and whether you want to stay trim and healthy and eat good food or not, you will be assailed by storefront after storefront selling interesting foods that you can buy on the fly and sample, and right, and you can choose to be a foodie, or you can choose to be a health nut as you're walking down that street, right? And one doesn't really require a lot of focus, and simply you just allow yourself to respond to stimuli, and the other one requires focused attention to discipline and kind of pushing actively away from some of the things that are causing you to just be like, oh, Starbucks, oh, McDonald's, oh, gourmet sandwich shop, right? And so if food is your drive, then there's a different way to react to all of that stuff than simply the most innate way, right? And it can be interesting because we're complicated beings. We have our lizard brain.
Can I
we
just
have
put you on?
our
Can I put you on pause for a second? I want to call for a
it's
pizza.
very difficult.
I'm getting hungry.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Can you please order pizza for me as well?
Would you also? And what would you like in yours?
I would like mushrooms and onions, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, you guys aren't going to even ask me what I want on my pizza?
What?
Liz, we were waiting for you to pitch in. We didn't want to
like Alex
force you into having pizza.
What would you like?
Well, I'm lactose intolerant, so I need a vegan pizza.
Okay.
So I am also lactose intolerant, and I have bottles and bottles of lactase pills, right? Because I can't avoid cheese.
Yeah, I understand.
We'll eat all of your cheeses.
Yeah, it was so much easier when I was a vegan.
We're at time. We've done a focused, I don't know how long.
Kind of, yeah. And now I'm hungry thanks to Alex's talk of walking down. Yep.
I do want to say
that at least half an hour.
We can say that we focused, but if you read Plato's Republic, right, the conversations depicted there seem a little more focused than what we just had.
Have you recently read the Republic?
Not recently, but it does.
Yeah.
Which
well, we can have a discussion about the Republic in a future D3 TV.
Yes.
Oh, I think that's a good idea.
I'm serious. I can bring a friend too.
Sounds good. So that you can have a Socratic dialogue right in front of us. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's been fun. Focus on pizza.
Yeah. Okay. So in conclusion, this has been another DOOR3 TV. Yeah, here we are. DOOR3. You can reach us at DOOR3.com. You can email us at projects@DOOR3.com. And drop a line if you have projects you'd like to talk to us about.
Focus line.
A single focus line.
Yep.